An LCAP and a budget presentation. And I'm going to ask Dr. Marsden if he wouldn't mind framing this, and let's get on with it.
Be my pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Gallo, and welcome everyone. It's our pleasure. I want to frame the conversation for tonight. I want to take a step back from our last presentation. Our intention is, given the condensed timeline, is to illustrate the new local control funding formula dollars in our preliminary budget, which you'll see tonight, as a placeholder to meet the county and state statutory timelines. Can you hear me? No. Oh, can we, let me move this a little closer. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, sorry, I just didn't have my mouth close enough. So our intention, given the condensed timeline, is to illustrate the new local control funding formula dollars in our preliminary budget as a placeholder to meet the county and state statutory timelines. In our initial presentation last week, we illustrated the dollars as already allocated. It was wrong of us to do that. Again, our intention was to illustrate the dollars as a placeholder. What our presentation will accomplish tonight is a brief overview of our current LCAP, our Local Control Accountability Plan. It'll be a few minutes. As a reminder, this is the board-approved 3-year living plan. This means we can make changes as often as we feel necessary to navigate our student, board, and community needs. Tonight we'll illustrate the new dollars as both ongoing and one-time monies. We'll orient you to the preliminary budget and statutory timelines as well. And our ongoing community engagement involvement approach, which we call our Community Budget Advisory Coalition, that'll be the next steps that we take, and we'll talk to you a little bit about that, to ultimately navigate these board and community priorities and bringing final staff recommendations. June 16th, your second meeting of this month, this is where, following today's public hearing, the board will adopt the LCAP and preliminary budget. Then later in August, once we have a final state budget, the board would then approve, as well as approving the part where we've allocated those placeholder dollars. So prior to your August meeting, we will have held 2 Community Budget Advisory Coalition meetings. We've joined that group with our extended cabinet meeting, so we have all the stakeholders that are in our community represented in those 2 meetings prior to you kind of having a final plan in August, including one piece you've heard a lot about is class size reduction. What should we do with class size reduction? We've been talking with Robert Rodriguez, our Teachers Association president. Will be meeting here before that August meeting so that we can recommend an approach that has the least impact on day one of school, but the most consideration of key research, context, and ability of the district to afford and sustain any additional considerations for class size reduction. So that's our plan. We're sticking to it. And what you have in front of you tonight is, again, a brief overview of the LCAP and preliminary budget. We're going to start with Dr. Zamora. She's going to give about a 5-minute presentation, a few slides on the LCAP. We'll pause if you have any clarifying questions. Then Mrs. King will give an overview of the preliminary budget. If you have any questions there, she'll answer those. And we wanted to give as max time as we can to any members of the public or staff or community that have questions. This is a public hearing, a chance for them to have that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Zamora. Thank you, Dr. Zamora.
Thank you, Dr. Marsden. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Okay, you have a couple of things in front of you. One, there's 2 PowerPoints that may look alike, but they are different. One of them says process update, and the other one says LCAP expenditures. You also have in this purple color the 8 state priorities. The PowerPoint that I'm going to go over is the one that says process update. So if you can go to page 2 on process update. And when we talk about our local control and accountability plan, we want to talk about where are we now. Currently, we've updated our plan to be placed on the new template that was provided by the California Department of Education this year. Because of that plan, because of that new template, our new plan is about 420 pages long. And the reason for that is that there were formatting changes done to it, as well as the required listing of budget codes. We are currently also moving forward with approved action line items based on stakeholder input gathered during the 13-14 school year and this past 14-15 school year. We have both one-time and ongoing costs as part of the funds being expended, and our recommendation is that any of the funds not spent this school year be carried over to the same line item to be discussed with our stakeholders and spent during the 15-16 school year. We have also been working closely with the Office of the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools to ensure that we are following regulations and ed code and be prepared to submit. Once it's board approved on the 16th, they will go directly to the County Office of Education. On page 3, you have the components of our plan. It was developed last year through extensive input from our community. As Dr. Marsden indicated, it is a 3-year plan requiring an annual update. This does not mean that we cannot adjust and modify during the school year as we see fit to better meet the needs of our students. It is aligned to our community engagement plan and our key performance indicators. It is also very much aligned to the 8 state priorities that you have in front of you. This coming school year, we will continue to work to ensuring that the key performance indicators, the metrics that we work on with regards to monitoring student achievement and student engagement, as well as the metrics that are in the plan, are tightly aligned to ensure that we're moving in the same direction. On page 4, last year during our stakeholder input meetings, we also went through a process of showing and sharing data with our stakeholders, and these are the 6 goals that came out of those discussions. Goal 1, ensuring that all students graduate from high school with a focus on A through G. Goal 2, a goal around our English learners and making sure that they become proficient. Goal 3, all students reach high standards and a minimum attaining proficiency or better in reading, language arts, and math. Goal 4, all students will be taught by highly qualified teachers. Goal 5, engage our parents in the education of their children, as well as reaching out to students that are 0 to 36 months. And goal 6, all students will be educated in a learning environment that is safe and drug-free. These goals are also very much in alignment with the 8 state priorities. On page 5, what are our next steps? We have updated our plan. We will continue to do that on a yearly basis. It will be presented to our board for approval on June 16th. Right after that, the next day, it goes to the County Office of Education. We do require county approval, and we will continue to work with our stakeholders to refine our plan through the engagement process that we've initiated. And as Dr. Marsden indicated, we will have meetings in July and August. We will also continue to align fiscal resources to ensure that we're meeting the goals and objectives in our community engagement plan, our KPIs, key performance indicators, and in our local accountability plan. And with that said, I'd like to just direct you to the other PowerPoint. The other PowerPoint is a reference for you. It outlines the line items that were prioritized by our board and identified by our community, and it also outlines the expenditures that we have initiated this school year, again with a recommendation that any funds not expended be carried over to next year's line item. At this time, I would like to open it up to any questions.
Okay, so if anybody from the board, and then if the board desires, they could open that at that time for the public for any questions on just the LCAP.
Dr. Hill?
Thank you. Thanks for the report. I just have one quick question. I don't know if it's a question or if it's just information I'm passing on as a messenger. But when we were at the conference in San Francisco last December, I went to the LCAP luncheon, and the lady who works at the State Department in charge of that department said, we will get 70% of all of your applications returned. And she said, and the main reason, because people fail to put anything in there about foster youth. So that was a big concern, I know, for LCAP, and that was the major thing she mentioned. So I'm just hoping we'll keep that in mind as, you know, you work the plan. Okay, but thank you.
And specific to foster youth, Dr. Hill, and I'll let Dr. Volkemer speak to this, we have something unique to, we believe, any school district so far that we're aware of, and I'll let him speak to what we have in play that I think is important for our community to know as well.
We have we have a principal on assignment, Angela Urquides, formerly the principal of Cole Elementary School, that expressed an interest in working specifically with our foster youth. So she is on board, and we've replaced her at Cole Elementary. She is working specifically with foster youth. That is in our plan very clearly. She's working under Dr. Mitchell's leadership, and she's been on board for several months, is getting to know the foster youth world, and how students are identified, and there's actually legislation now looking to change the definition of what constitutes a foster youth. And she's doing a needs assessment of our district, and we'll be making recommendations in terms of next steps. So I think we've been told that we're the only district anywhere that has a specific person devoted to foster youth services.
Great.
Well, that's good. That reason I'm sure we'll be in that 30%. And I need to meet her because I want to invite her to something I started when I worked for county school, which was the Summer Institute at the University of Redlands, and they're getting ready to start, I think, in about a week. And I know quite a number of students from this district in that program.
Dr. Mitchell, did I leave anything out?
No, that's perfect. I'll ask her to contact you and get that information.
Good, thank you.
And we, of course, have articulated this in our plan, I take it.
Yes.
Yeah, good, great. Okay, any other questions from board members? Then we can pretty much open it up to anybody that'd like to make a comment. If you wouldn't mind stepping up to the microphone at the podium here. We'll just, I'd ask that you identify yourself and ask any question or share any comments that you'd like. As, if there aren't any, we can move on to the budget. I'm sorry, well, please step up. Come on, please step up to the
She says
podium.
no. She said no.
No, okay, great. All right, let's move on to the budget presentation if we could, Ken.
Okay, Mrs. King, thank you.
Surely, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, you should have,
Apologize, we do have one question. So Mrs. Romero, welcome. We have translators well.
No. Let's see what goes next.
Yo también quería, si me podían especificar cuánto es lo que también están dando los niños especiales, porque no veo mucho para ellos.
I would like to ask what else you guys are offering for kids in special ed, because I don't see very much given or offered to the children for special education.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Romero, for your question. So I have Dr. Mitchell, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, oversees all of special ed. He can give you a specific answer.
The special education funds were not wrapped into the LCFF funds like the other categorical funds were. And so those funds didn't change, but the district is currently spending about $60 million on special education programs.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Romero. Thank you. You bet. And Mrs. King.
okay, you should have in front of you the preliminary budget PowerPoint package. With the governor's May revise, the district again continues to benefit from the LCF funding, and in mid-May, we received details of of additional funding, and we're going to walk through in this particular slide the details of that funding. However, when we have additional funding, the district does have a process to allocate the funds, which includes the extended cabinet, which has previously been called the Community Budget Advisory Coalition, and they would bring recommendations to the board for identified priorities. And given the timelines that we have, since we discovered the additional funding and the details of that funding, we have put in place the following to accommodate those funds. So we have additional funds received as of the May revision, which is subsequent to the second interim. LCFF funding, we received an additional $24.4 million, one-time discretionary funds of $20 million, and a slight adjustment to our adult ed funding of $1 million, giving us a total additional funding of $43.4 million. Now, with additional funding and additional expenditures, we did have some required budget adjustments, and with our ongoing salary increases, we have additional costs with class size and contributions to other required programs such as special ed and routine repair and maintenance of $6.4 million. Then we also included adjustments to the special education program of $6.4 million, and we're going to bring the details of and justification for those increases to the board for consideration at a future board meeting. With those two additions, we still have $30.6 million remaining. Due to the short timeline between the publication of the May revision and the budget adoption, we took those additional funds and put them in the budget in the following placeholders. There's LCAP, there's $10 million allocated to existing categories, and one-time discretionary funds of $10 million has been set aside in a separate program. We also have, after having allocated those amounts, we have an unassigned ending balance of $10.6 million. In addition, we do have an anticipated $1.9 million from the close of books from 2014-15. That amount will more than likely change as we're still in the very beginning of June and we have another month or so before the books close. So with that, the total available for the board to identify their priorities and consider application of those funds is $32.5 million. Moving to the next slide, this is basically a pie chart that illustrates the total combined general fund revenue. We have total LCFF sources of $472.5, and of course, federal and state and other local revenue. And you see in the little chart down at the bottom that the breakdown between base funding and supplemental and concentration funding, the $472.5, which is the total projected LCFF funding, does agree to the amount that's included there in the pie chart. Moving to the next slide, these are two separate pie charts for each of the types of funding included in the total. We have unrestricted revenue and restricted revenue, which again, they each have their separate sources of sources where the dollars come from. Moving forward to the total combined expenditures, the same theory applies. This is the total for all expenditures of the general fund, both restricted and unrestricted. Of course, those expenditures are comprised of salaries, benefits, books and supplies, and other operating expenses for a total of $604.1 million. And then turning to the next slide, you have a breakdown composed of unrestricted and restricted. And you can see that, again, it's the same categories, just in different proportions. And, of course, the restricted funding is driven by, the restricted expenditures are driven by the funding and what they must be used for. So moving to page 7, which is the chart of the 2015-16 unrestricted general fund. And what we did here is provide a projection, or a comparison, I'm sorry, of the projection that we made at second interim to the projection that we have made now based upon the May revision, which was published in mid-May. So what we'll do is we'll walk through the different categories of the budget, the first one being revenues. And so you can see at second interim, we had projected 474.4 million in revenue. With the May revise and that 43.4 million, we're now up at 517.8 million. Then we go to expenditures, and you can see that originally we had 431.9 million in the expenditure column at second interim, and we have increased it to 464.6, which does include the $10 million that we have as a placeholder for LCAP, and $10 million as a placeholder for the one-time discretionary funding. And then moving to the bottom where we have the unassigned and unappropriated, you can see that in the May revision column, the center column, there's still $12.6 million remaining, which does include the $10.6 million for one-time board priorities and any additional fund balance that we anticipate would come out. Now moving to the next slide, slide 8, you'll see there are 4 columns. This is the multi-year. It's showing the estimate for 2014-15, 2015-16, and projections for 2016-17 and 2017-18 based upon what we know at this point in time. So again, you can see that at the end of 2014-15, we have an estimate of 1.9 million remaining. And again, that number will more than likely change somewhat. And then we begin in 2015-16, bringing those balances forward from 2014-15, adding the revenue, subtracting the expense. And again, you can see as referenced by the reference point number 1, or footnote number 1, that we have the $10 million is included for LCAP priorities, and the $10 million is included also for the discretionary funding. Moving to the bottom, you can see at footnote number 2 that we still have the $12.5 million, which is unassigned and is still another opportunity for the board to consider what options it would like to take. Then moving into 16-17 and 17-18, you can see that the expenditures have been adjusted, expenditures and revenue have been adjusted for anything that we know at this time and anticipate to happen. So at the end of 2017-18, while there's not a lot of discretionary funding remaining, we are still positive and able to meet our required reserve requirements. Moving on to slide.
Now, Janet, can I ask just a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
If we chose to allocate, like you did the 10 million and 10 million in 15-16, the 12.5, the 12.5, that would reduce the amount of available, I guess, ending balance that you would have in subsequent years.
It
right?
would. Those
So-
balances at the end, it would definitely impact subsequent years, and whatever would be done, which should definitely be considered a one-time
So
option.
we'll, I'm assuming, get some advice and counsel as to how much of that, say, 32.5 or so million that we really should be allocating
Yes.
towards programmatic
Yes.
elements. Got it. Thank you.
Moving on to slide 9, this is a history of the board priorities that we had identified in the past. If you look to the column that's headed in a light green shade, you look back all the way to May 2012. This is at the end of the period where we had been sustaining many years of cuts, and the board had identified some of the priorities that it would like to see first be considered if we should ever receive any new funding. So moving to the next column, which is a blue header, these were, we worked with our Community Budget Advisory Coalition and staff and came up with recommendations as to what they would like to see restored should we receive any new funding. And you can see that's in May 2013, which is about a year later. Then in July 2013, which is the column with the pink header, that's the point in time where we had finally been told that we were going to receive additional dollars, and we began to apply those dollars to those priorities. And then in the last column, you can see that the actions taken subsequent to that date, in a few of them some of them were actually included in our LCAP plan, as because the community seemed to agree with those priorities as well. And so as of this date, all of the priorities that were listed here have been restored or addressed.
Janet, maybe one quick question. The third line down on, your, I guess, category column, we have a line item that just shows $1.235 million, but no what is that allocated to? Under middle school counselors.
That's a subtotal from the elementary and middle school counselors up above.
Got it. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Maybe we could just note that subtotal or something. Yeah, got it.
Okay. Moving on to slide 10. We took the summary document for how we had allocated the LCAP priorities in the past, the $25.2 million. And what we're illustrating here is of the $10 million, because we do have to address it in our LCAP plan, we allocated the dollars as placeholders in the same proration as we did all of the other, the $25.2. So you can see at the bottom, the $10 million has been included at this point in time as a placeholder in each of those categories as indicated.
This is a great chart because it actually shows, the total available for LCAP and the allocation process that we did. The other 10 million of one time that you briefed on the first chart was just thrown in a category.
We just put it in a single account, on
Yeah,
a single
not
line.
allocated.
It's not allocated.
Got it.
It's not included here. Okay. Moving on to slide 11. This is the timeline for which we are hoping to address these additional dollars and further define how they're to be expended. So of course today we have the preliminary hearings on the budget, and then we will hope to adopt on June 16. And then beginning in July, we're going to start the meetings that's going to have the discussion as to how these dollars might be better allocated, more further allocated. And then we hope to bring it all to the board for their approval in August and include everything throughout the budget at that point in time.
So there's basically a couple of more opportunities to, ensure community cabinet / board input
Yes.
in this process. Great.
Yes.
Excellent.
And then the last slide just speaks to, again, those things that have been challenges for us, considering the PERS and STRS increases, which over time is up to $37.6 million. Our health and welfare benefits have been increasing at an estimated $4.6 million per year. If that were to continue indefinitely, that would definitely put some additional pressures on the budget. Other post-employment benefits, our obligation over time is $35 million. And then, of course, LCFF funding is volatile, and we know that last year from the changes that they projected in gap funding from the May revise to the governor's May revision, kind of puts the brakes on some of the things we were planning initially until that was restored again. Gap percentages can change. The unduplicated pupil count can change, and it can go up, it can go down, and until that population is actually measured, we don't know for certain, so that could change it halfway through the year this year. We might find out that our percentage changed again. And then the last piece, of course, is COLA, which the COLA can have some impact.
Now, you have made projections as to the impact of these various budget challenges in our budget and put what we think is a conservative estimate on the impact of these that we know?
Yes, they have all been included.
So, and I'm sorry, go ahead, Linda. And health benefits,
Yes.
as you characterize them here. And your caution is they could go up from here.
They could go up.
I see. On any one of these categories.
That's correct.
Got it. But they're accounted for in
They are accounted
this-
for under the current assumptions
projection.
that we've been using, knowing what we know at this point in time.
Great. Let's we'll open it up to questions. Linda?
Janet, I want to thank you. It's a great report to review all this. It's awfully nice to be able to sit here and think, somebody gave us money for a change.
For a change,
And,
absolutely.
This is wonderful, and I'm looking down here at all the kinds of things that we could be looking at as far as increase in our music program. I mean, all these different programs that we're going to increase, which was part of what the parents were asking also, as well as ourselves. So that's wonderful. Thank you.
It is.
Thanks, Linda. Any other comments from around the table? Dr. Hill?
Thank you. Linda, I'm sorry. Janet, look down at Linda.
It's okay.
Janet, I also want to applaud you. I love pie charts, because during my days in school, that's what we had to learn, the pie charts. So I can look at them and understand everything else. The rest of it. But at any rate, I just want to say thank you. But I do have questions on pages 9, 10, and 12. On page 9, there's, as you take a look at the action taken in to address the priorities for May of 2014, now everything's restored, and shall we assume the 4 in the bottom that's put in the 14-15 LCAP will also be restored?
Okay, those that were included in the LCAP, and I'm going to, let's see, get my lines here. The community engagement plan is, has been incorporated in with the LCAP. We found that their priorities and goals are similar. Did you want to?
Yeah, so specifically, Dr. Volkemer can speak to some points. Dr. Zamora, several cabinet members can speak to the appropriate point that they're engaged in. So, for example, Dr. Volkemer, why don't you share some of the highlights on each of those included in 2014-15 LCAP pieces?
Sorry, I've got to line it up. I can't see it that closely anymore.
Would you like me to read it to you,
No,
Dr.?
I got it. Thank you. Appreciate
You know,
that.
Costco has some readers that are a little bit enhanced.
Do we have a magnifying glass? So in terms of our community engagement plan, if Dr. Zamora shared the goals of the community engagement plan, which are very much aligned with our KPIs, and we will work through the 2015-16 year to more tightly align the LCAP and our community engagement plan to the point where they're really one and the same. Our community engagement plan is the driving force of our work. So if you look through the LCAP, you'll see many efforts that relate directly to our community engagement plan. A to G work, graduation rates, dropout rates, making sure that students are proficient, getting better scores in algebra, et cetera. So that's when we say that it's it's in the LCAP, that means that it has been addressed in the LCAP. Now, the board may come back with some of this extra money and after the community engagement process and say, we want to put even more money toward, let's say, increase to arts and music programs. So the board put $500,000 in the LCAP for each of the next 3 years. You may say, based on the work through Dr. Zamora's office and Kevin Philippi in the development of the VAPA strategic plan, we need to put another X number of dollars toward that. Same thing with the athletic strategic plan. We're in our final phase of getting that work done. So you may, thank you, Hector. You may say we want to devote extra resources to that. So all of these last 4 items are addressed directly in the LCAP plan.
And many of the board, yourself included, Dr. Hill, were present at our key stakeholder meetings where the unabridged version of the LCAP presentation that you have available tonight as well. And, you know, I'll draw your attention further to one of the other line items around, for example, increasing arts and music programs as a line item in which you're looking at the underboard priorities. You know, it lays out the detail, 230 violins, 60 trombones, 40 key. I mean, so all the detail is in that backup information where each of those pieces were, just as a reminder. And all of our community groups have been briefed on the detail of that information, so they're aware as well of the detail in which the dollars have been allocated.
Okay, and that's what I was just hoping all stakeholders going to be pleased with what we, what we do in those areas. Okay, that's good. Now, if you look at page 10, the additional budget allocation to identified priorities, $25,200,000. Is all of that encumbered? Is this what been, okay. Harold is nodding yes. Janet?
Okay. The 25.2 million was actually put into the budget and put in play in 2014-15, although we did have some challenges in getting it going till a little bit later in the year. So we anticipate that there's going to be about $10.5 million that were still unspent, and that will be carried over into the next year and applied till exactly the same categories. This allocation of 25.2 million will also be allocated again to those exact same priorities.
Okay, all right. Very good. And the last
Which is what we approved, Dr. Hill, in our second
Right.
interim, right?
Right.
First
Yes.
and second interim. Yeah.
Right, okay. And the last one, with the challenges, do we know, and it's probably a question for Mr. Porkett, do we have any projections on ADA for, for 16, 17, and 17, 18? Because I'm thinking of all the developments with the Racino Ranch group, as well as there's a development coming up near Cal State, and with a little bit of luck, there'll be another development towards East Highland.
Yes, the enrollment actually has bottomed out, and we are now on an increased path. And Rosina Ranch has restarted their construction program, estimated to fill in another 1,900 homes out there. There are some developments around Cal State that they're going to be dusting off the plans for implementation. There is currently a housing project going on across the street from Cal State for student housing. It is under construction, and I think that's about 900 units. So yes, definitely the community is re-engaged in a building program, and our future does look positive.
Good, thank you. So our challenges will, well, they'll continue, but at least in another area, but it's a good thing.
Right, and just to highlight, we have projected flat enrollment, because I believe was it before second interim, we projected a little growth. We had to pull that back out, I think.
Oh,
Yes.
did you?
Yeah, so we're being conservative, projecting flat. If we get more, great, that's always nice news.
Good.
We will see if additional ADA materializes, we will see additional funding coming our way. But to be conservative, we kept it level.
Okay, good, thank you. Good report.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Hill. Let's open it up to any further questions, any questions from members of the public. Just feel free to come on up, step to the podium, identify yourself. Well, if you wish. You don't have to identify yourself if you don't want. But it's not a requirement. But Robert, I already know who you are, so.
Well, hello. I'm Robert Rodriguez. Hello, sir. Couple questions. On page 2, you indicated that at the bottom of it, for LCAP allocated in existing categories, $10 million, and one-time discretionary funds of $10 million as well. If we were to lower class size, from which pot of money would that come from?
The one-time discretionary money is one time. So if you're going to lower class size and anticipate that it would be an ongoing lowering of class size, it definitely would not come from the discretionary dollars. So by virtue of that, I would have to come from the LCAP.
From LCAP then?
Or, yes, well, yeah, it would be LCAP.
So was it LCAP or the one-time?
No, it would come from LCAP because
LCAP.
one time is one time.
Okay,
It's
so
not
we
going to
wouldn't
be
want it
there to
ongoing.
support it in future years.
So we know that elementary principals have received notice of their staffing ratios for elementary's grades K through 3 as 25-1 and grades 4 through 6 as 33-1. What are the projected student staffing ratios for middle school and high school?
I don't know if Perry wanted, do you?
I believe, if memory serves, and it's been a couple of years, we staff middle schools at 29-1 and high schools at 30-1, I believe. But we can clarify that and make sure.
That's correct.
We did
That
not
is
change
correct.
the ratios from the prior year, so.
So middle schools will be staffed at 29-1 and high schools will be staffed at 30-1.
Sounds right.
Yes.
So what would the cost be to lower class sizes by 2 students in grades 4 through 12? It seems like we're working towards doing the grade span adjustment in the primary grades, but we're looking at the other grades 4 through 12.
We would have to go through and recalculate the impact of that and bring that back to you.
Thank you. And my final question is on page 12, where you listed the summaries for the challenges for pension and health benefits. Are those cumulative totals based on the 3-year budget, or are they annually?
No, those are, okay, the health and welfare is an annual amount. The pension and the OPEB, those are cumulative totals.
So the pension for 37.6, that's going to be over all the years
It's
of the...
actually over all the years that are included in the plan. I believe it's 5.
So 5 years. And then on the health benefits increase of 4.6 million, it is a two-year agreement. So is that going to be 4.6 for the span of the 2 years, or is it going to be every year we're looking at a 4.6?
For 15-16, we were looking at a 4.6. Their estimate for their rate cap for 16-17 is 9%, and I concluded that 9% ongoing into 17-18. I left it at 9% doing that increase. Does that answer your question?
So it would be annually then?
Yes.
It's not compounded, okay.
No, it's annual, yes.
Thank you.
Well, it's annual, but at 9 million, so it's not
At
4.6 and 4.6.
It's 9% of the
it's nine-
total, of the total health and welfare expense that we're paying now. It's increasing by
Yeah,
9%
got it.
each
Okay,
year.
got it.
Approximately, yes.
And then, Robert, just to clarify, when we do have our meeting on class size reduction, we'll get into the weeds of all of the questions you had. Yeah.
Okay, that's,
Esmeralda Negrete.
hi.
I had a comment here. I see that on page 3, regarding the visual and performing arts, there's 500,000 set aside, and I appreciate that you're giving us details.
I'm sorry, let's,
Yes.
what presentation are we on?
The community engagement plan,
Oh,
LCAP.
I think you, Mrs. Negrete, I think you have 2 slides per page.
Yes.
Are you looking at what's the number on the slide?
5.
Okay, slide 5.
and that must be the detailed 5?
Yes.
Is that right?
And thank you very much for the details. I greatly appreciate that part.
Detail, slide 5, got it.
Yes.
Okay,
Are we there?
yep.
Okay. I see that there, of course, there's an example of 230 violins, 60 trombones, 40 keyboards. However, my concern as a parent, because I know that we are a very large district, I think that we're being very conservative with the 500,000 spent for our visual and performing arts, because we have so many students. When you think about 230 violins and just the number of instruments, we're roughly giving about 330 or purchasing 330
Sure.
when you have thousands of students.
It's a perfect question. And so what I want to draw your attention to is on the budget presentation, slide 10, where it says summary of adopted LCAP plus placeholders, that $10 million line that says placeholder allocations. We are now going forward from today's meeting into the conversation with our Community Budget Advisory Coalition leaders, people like yourself, at our extended cabinet meetings to begin these discussions around additional priorities. So this $10 million, don't hold it tight in any place. We're just putting there as a placeholder to meet state and statutory requirements, state and federal, statutory requirements. We will then, as a community, parent input, so forth, give input around how do we reorganize those dollars to meet our priorities. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we could, as an entire body, say we want all $10 million, which I doubt we'll say, but we, to go to these things. We have these competing priorities. We can do anything we want, can't do everything, but our goal is to take those dollars and have those discussions. just so
Okay.
you're aware. So it's no disagreement. $500,000 may be too small for visual and performing arts. The conversation is that we will have the discussion ongoing from here.
I think it would be beneficial to limit the barriers of student participation because as a district, you service as far as music goes, it goes from elementary through high school.
Correct.
It's not just elementary, it's not just high
Right
school.
on.
Every single school in our district
Absolutely.
offers that, and I would love to see more students be engaged and not be limited because they don't have an instrument.
You're preaching to the choir.
Thank you.
Keep it going. All right, thank you so much. Next, I think we have Denise Jensen. Come on, you're welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Should I fill out a slip?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Denise Jensen. I'm the field director for California School Employees Association, CSEA. And the other day when we were here looking at some preliminary big picture numbers and your financial services department identified the additional funds beyond what we understood in the the governor's January budget, that you identified this $20 million, some of it one time, some of it ongoing as far as LCFF. That time I asked the board to consider using some of those funds to restore some of the classified services that have been abolished by the board. And I was asked for some more information about that. So I have brought here enough copies for all the board, a list of the abolishments, as well as a job description or job posting so you could see the services provided by each one of these positions that was abolished by the board for this coming fiscal year. So I'd like to provide those to you or your assistant, and she will hand them out to you. And so I again ask you to consider that. We also have had abolishments and reductions the last 2 years. So I brought enough copies of those as well for the board if they're interested. I have them in my briefcase, but I wanted to focus on this. And like I said, I did identify the basic duties of each of these so you could see the services these eliminated positions previously provided to students.
And do you participate in the Budget Advisory Committee and Extended Cabinet? Is there a representative from CSEA that participates?
I have not. I don't. I assume that somebody, the local chapter's been invited. Whether or not they participate, I would
Well, I
hope
mean,
so.
that would be a great place, since we will be having a number of these discussions as to where we're going to allocate some of these additional dollars. That would be sure an appropriate place to have that occur. So,
Okay.
sure.
So I'll ask my good friend Dr. Wiseman to send me a list of those meetings.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. And yes, as a board, just to refresh your memory, our Community Budget Advisory Coalition, which was established in the past, does definitely, by design, include all of our union leaders. They're invited individually as well as collectively. If they have a group of leaders that want to come, we're always welcoming that. We also do have time during those budget meetings for our union leaders, experts in budget, to present to the whole group. So we've heard, for example, a CTA presentation, leaders from CSEA in the past. We welcome those, we want those, we want to open. You know, a lot of times what happens in a district is you have one perspective that's on a different planet than the district's perspective. We want everybody to be at least in the same room. And that's our intention as we go in these meetings, so that we're open, we're transparent, we're informed, et cetera. So that's that. And as well, we have always invited our budget subcommittee of the board to attend those meetings as well.
It's great. Thank you, Dale. Any other comments? Ron, I see you coming up.
Good afternoon. I have a question. You talk about health going up 9% and everything. Well, this year there's a couple new laws on board, and we got 842 substitutes. Is this health that you have here going to include the health costs for the substitutes? That's something that's important.
Mrs. King can answer that directly for you.
Okay, assuming you're referring to the Affordable Care Act?
And the sick leave.
And the sick leave, yes. We have included an estimate of what we believe those will cost us, and so as we implement that health insurance process for the substitutes, we will come forth with more details, but at this time, we have an estimate, and we have included it in the budget. It's about $1 million.
Okay, is it possible for the union leader to get a copy of this estimate so that we can look at it?
We're in the process of recalculating based upon all the substitutes, because especially with the changes in our classified and the number of positions being filled, we're kind of refiltering it out again and recalculating, so we will have to bring that back for you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Question, is it possible to spend some of the $10 million that you have set aside? I see on page 9 from the LCAP, we have on page 9 Ed Trust West National Center, and I've actually met them, and they did a study for a high school that I'm a parent of. One of the things that has been brought up at our school site council has been, why aren't we using some of our professionals here who work every day, who know our children, who know our community, to give their input, for them to partake in some of these studies? Do we have something like that, or is that something that could possibly be pilot? To have them perform a study, use some of our teachers. Who knows better what our kids need than those who are here?
No question, that's a great idea, and we're actually in the middle of a district-wide effort that it's called Instructional Rounds, where all of our leaders go collectively to our schools. We have teachers and staff with us, and we're continually collecting data around what's working in our school districts. So that is, and matter of fact, the Ed Trust West people that you mentioned have joined us in that conversation, so that value-added work we're doing with our own people is extended and infused into that report. So what West Ed and the National Center for Urban School Transformation bring is that outside eye, that sometimes you need a critical friend from the outside to take a look at what you're doing. So that's what they're currently doing today. So thank you. Perfect idea.
I understand that one. My concern there, it's because they are an outside eye. They don't see our day-to-day.
Oh, I understand.
They're not, they don't know the families. They don't know the students. Could we perhaps stay more focused within our surrounding cities, not somebody that's coming from out of state to come out here and give their input? It's great to have them, but I see that they're also here in the budget for the 2015-2016. And we have some teachers that are very wise. We have teachers with doctorates. Why not utilize what we have? Just like I've asked in the past, could we do perhaps pilot the same program that Middle College has started, to use their teachers that have a doctorate, that now our Middle College High kids get college credit at Middle College High instead of having to necessarily go to Valley College? Could that be something that could be expanded throughout the district at all of our high schools to take advantage of that they receive college credit? Maybe collaborating with Cal State and Valley College, so that opportunity goes district-wide, not just specific at Middle College High. I know that I hear parents from there asking all the time for sports, but those of us who don't have our kids at Middle College High would like our kids to have the same benefits that they have at Middle College High, which is receiving credit from a community college.
Great.
Is that something that perhaps be considered with the 10 million? Both of those, well, all three of those, because I'm asking for instruments, I'm asking that we
Correct.
utilize our...
Sure.
I mean,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. If there are no other members of the public to address the board, just want to remind the board we have some key collaborative meetings that are going on from now really through the end of the year. Class size reduction conversation, again, we'll begin the initial conversation here and complete it by August 3rd, so that we have any recommendations to bring to you regarding class size reduction specifically is taken then. By November of this year, we will have a competitive discussion completed in terms of, remember this conversation around creating an environment in San Bernardino City Unified School District where we can attract and retain people at all levels. So that conversation we anticipate completing by November. And then by the end of December, we anticipate completing, this is a big conversation, but it's a career pathways collaborative discussion. How might we ensure we have solid career pathways in place, and we've got the infrastructure, the support mechanisms in play by December. So there's a lot of heavy lifting going on, but it's very positive work. Looking forward to that, bringing you the best recommendations all along this journey to make sure that we do the best work possible to propel our community engagement plan forward.
Dale, let me ask a question of the team. Kind of on what Esmeralda was going, we do have these, this articulation agreement with Valley College, and have we thought about incorporation currently in the budget at all, or the LCAP, about the adjunct professorships, some of our teachers getting that designation, being able to teach either at our local high schools and deliver those kinds of courses? And has this been built in, or do we need to incorporate this as our next?
Great question. We probably want, the answer is probably yes to both of those. And so I'm going to tell ask Dr. Mitchell to speak to that.
Yes, so this year we negotiated with Valley College to add 4 sections to be taught at middle college. And those adjunct professor positions will be flown within our teacher ranks. And so we'll use that as a pilot program and look at expanding that program going out to the future toward our other comprehensive high schools, so that we're giving opportunity for the other comprehensive high school students to earn college credit. But the immediate need was to create more access for our current middle college high school students who, because of staffing ratios at Valley, and also limits to the state ed code does not allow more than 7 high school students in a college class at Valley's campus. This would allow us to put 20 to 25 kids in a class and offer those classes at middle college in a safer environment, and be able to crank more of our kids through the program.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, did we think through perhaps for subsequent years, this will be a pilot at, say, middle college?
Yes.
As to how you might roll it out into pilot at each one of the other.
Yeah, so that's just a matter of funding, and certainly I know that.
That's my point.
Yeah, that's just a matter of funding, Mr. Gallo.
Okay, Dr. Hill?
I just want to mention, I know we have well, she graduated, but we had a student at Cal State this past year taking chemistry. And I don't know if I don't know how that happens, or if that's something that the student pursued on her own.
Yeah, it sounds like something she pursued on her own. Right now, all students are eligible to apply to Valley and other Cal States and pay on their own, and a lot of parents do that. The unique opportunity at Valley College is that all of those costs are incurred by the school district.
Sure.
Okay, is there any other last shot? Sergio?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sergio Luna with ICUC. Have maybe 2-3 questions. The first one is in regards to the Latino achievement on page number 5 of the community engagement plan. I remember we met about maybe 3 weeks ago or so about the Latino achievement and the planning and all that. And I don't remember seeing the $720,000 for Puente, nor at the previous board meeting. So that I know we met earlier today, and we're going to continue that conversation and planning and everything. But as that comes along, that's like a new number for myself and some of the parents here present. It's $720,000 Puente July summer session.
What page?
It's page number 5.
Page 9. It's actually page 9 of your slides. Yeah.
You're looking at slide 9 of the detailed piece, I think. Is that what you're on, Sergio?
Yes.
And you're under expenditures, under Latino student achievement.
Yes.
And you're on 720, second bullet on page 9. And it says $720,000 Puente July summer session. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have Dr. Zamora, I think, is to speak to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, this was shared at the last DLAC meeting a week ago, Friday. And it came as a result of providing something more impactful and immediate to students. This is just an estimate. It may not realize to that level. The other recommendation that was there before was on professional development, allocating the possibility of an expenditure of up to maybe $500,000. The conversation was this would have an immediate impact on students. So a way to add to the current high school, summer school sessions that would give us immediate results. The expenditure is just a tentative projection. It may not materialize to that level.
Okay. And following up on that, the numbers are real close to the Gente proposal. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I thought there was like some understanding among the Latino leaders that the planning and conversation about how the money is going to be spent was going to be carried over through that committee. So when we see like numbers just being added or programs, that's when it brings up the question. But basically the Puente program that we do have in our district, or is this like an outsourcing program coming from another county?
This is not outsourcing. This is our own teachers, our own staff, and this has absolutely nothing to do with Gente.
Okay, thank you. And the other question was in regards to the increasing funding for parent with the 10 million. I know that it was kind of spread out as the allocations. That's going back to page 10 of the budget. And it looks like this. I know we have several.
We're with you on the budget presentation, page 10.
Who will be making the decisions of how, it seems like it's been spread out according to the proportions of the previous budgeting. Is that going to continue, or who will make the decisions of how the 10 million will be spent, basically?
So we have 2 meetings coming up, which are our Community Budget Advisory Coalition meetings that are coincide with our extended cabinet meeting. You're invited, you've attended some in the past, and that is the meeting where we begin the discussion around the $10 million. Again, it's a placeholder, so don't hold tightly to any of the dollars being in any one specific category. We may very well want to push all the 10 million out to visual and performing arts, as we had a discussion, or we may want to push it to the sites. So sites have more discretionary dollars to do work there. So that discussion will take place during those 2 meetings.
Okay.
To be clear.
Thank you, Dr. Marsden. And my last question was, will be in regards to school climate. I know there has been a lot of conversation about reducing suspensions and.
Are you looking at a specific page, or you just have a different
the same
topic?
page.
Same page, okay.
Looking at the same numbers. I know every year we're allocating $500,000 for safety and security under school climate on the same page, and $100,000 for teacher-student-parent relationships. And I know that we have been real clear about the importance of us reducing the amount of days that our students are spending outside of the schools. That is basically pushing them out of our school system. And I believe that spending $500,000 every year to increase policing, regardless if it's equipment, new cars, or whatever the case it could be, is not going to help us reduce suspensions at all. And
Sure.
as far as school climate goes.
Sure.
So recommendation would be, just like the one we did last year on June 3rd, to switch the numbers this year at least. Put $500,000 more for trainings and the proper support for our teachers to be able to handle a classroom, but also giving the students the tools that they need. Even if we just hire 1 or 2 social emotional specialists that would deal with the students that are at risk or have going through a lot of troubles, that are bringing these troubles to our classrooms. So that's just a recommendation that we're still pushing for, to be more aggressive about purposely reducing suspensions in our district, but also having a full implemented PVIS, not just in a written statement, but also with numbers that will basically get it rolling with the proper support for our teachers and our students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Any further public comment, or any comments for that matter? If not, we can.
I'm sorry. I just want to ask one question, because Dr. Zamora, when you talked about the Puente project, I was thinking it was the one at San Bernardino Valley College, that it's been there for years.
No,
but
I'm
this
sorry.
is something new?
This is an internal summer school to augment the summer schools that are at the high schools for the students that maybe did not have a place, so that we could expand to more children. We could definitely change the name if that's an issue.
Oh, no, that's not an issue. I just assumed that until Sergio.
We're running a different summer school. It's a bridge program for our 8th graders going into 9th. And we just thought maybe in Spanish the same thing, puente means bridge. But we can definitely, this is totally internal. It's reaching out to our teachers and administrators who want to participate in the program.
Oh, I think that's good. Thank you.
Okay, we will thank our presenters. Way to go, guys. And we do have a closed session beginning at 5:30, and we will open our official meeting, board meeting, at 6 o'clock, as the agenda states. And so we'll bring this meeting to a close. Thank you.